Welcome to tonight's QI, where we're giving ourselves up to an evening of idleness and indolence. Joining me in the hammock with a large gin and tonic in this week's edition of Knitting Today, we have the inactive Ross Noble, the immobile Dara Briain, the indolent Jeremy Clarkson, and the simply inoperative Alan Davis. And should any of our panel feel the need to bother with their buzzers today, they sound like this. Ross goes, Dara goes, Jeremy goes, and Alan goes. I'm going to go. It's that kind of a lazy day. And before we dive in, I should remind our panel of the Nobody Knows Joker.
Nobody knows.
Yes, for this series, there may be a question to which the answer actually is nobody knows. And if you think that I've just asked that question, then wave the question mark that Alan has just demonstrated. And with that, we might as well shamble along into a question. I've got my hands on the American nuclear trigger. Without putting yourselves to too much effort, see if you can tell me what the code is.
Secret trigger code.
The secret trigger code given to every American president between the years of 1960 and 1977.
I think that if you've got to remember it under pressure,
yes,
and it would be a pressure situation,
surely, beginning
the end of the world, it's got to be something quite simple.
It's 00000000. That literally was the code. 4 zeros twice, 8 zeros.
8 zeros.
I'm good at maths.
8 zeros. That was the password.
Is that because you're just about, it's the end of the world and you're going to go, oh. Did the president, when he's testing this, did he do the chip and pin, you know, that little dance you do when is the shopkeeper just looking at you and you kind of go,
or pretend to press.
Or you do a bug, because I just do a cover.
No, because you not notice polite shopkeepers now do this, which is what they call the penny chews. Yeah. We just go like that and they do
I think it's pretend to do other numbers than the ones they're doing. Yeah.
So you're there with the lovely Debbie McGee going, do your number, but while you're doing your number, you say a different number slightly under your breath, so you look like a bit of an idiot.
Well, that's like all rubbing your tummy and patting your head.
Like
yes, that is clever.
His number's 457.
But because the people I always most hated at school were those who, when they were writing in a test, did that.
Yeah.
As if one cared about what
That's
dribble they wrote.
because you're not an idiot.
Oh, no. It's just such a creepy way of behaving. So I always just do like that, grandly make sure that my number is
I published mine in The Sun once.
It
went quite badly wrong.
That was very funny.
I couldn't understand it because they were complaining that everybody's bank details had been left on a train by a civil servant or somebody, and I thought, well, it doesn't make any difference because all they can do is make a deposit. So I published my number, and there you go, there's my bank account number. What are you going to do with that? And the Diabetic Society helped themselves to 500 quid.
Well, in case you feel smart, the British code, what do you think that was?
Crikey.
You didn't even have one, is the answer. Basically, it was a bicycle lock key. And to arm the weapon, you remove 2 screws from a panel, like opening the back of a remote control device. And this revealed the sequence of dials. But this wasn't codes, it was merely settings, whether you wanted the bomb for an airburst or a ground burst. You just do it really like that.
So Harold Wilson had to undo the back of a panel, and then...
I don't think they brought politicians into it at all. It was just Flight Lieutenant Sanderson.
Oh, he just set it off.
That's right.
When the mood took him.
Yeah. They should have had it like, you know, the top of a tin of ham.
Yes.
Well, the world's going to end, but never mind. Lovely ham sandwich.
Absolutely. That would have been the answer. As far as passwords are concerned, what do you think is the current state of advice? I'm sure everyone watching probably has passwords for anything from bank accounts to social media. What's the advice?
The advice is that you should always have a different password for every single thing that you have.
Right.
And they must always contain at least 8 digits, some of which should be numbers and some of which should be letters, and you mustn't write them down anywhere.
Exactly. That's the point. That kind of advice is useless because there really isn't a human being on the planet, certainly one wouldn't want to meet, who would be capable of holding all those in his head at the same time. And actually, the current advice is don't bother about writing it down because if you've written it down and you've got it in a drawer in your desk, you're more likely to have your password stolen online by malware than you are by a burglar getting into your house and seeing it's written down somewhere.
If you need lots of different ones for a lot of different things, do what I do and have each of the 7 dwarves.
Oh, you've given it away.
I also think a burglar breaking into your house is usually like a lot less interested in information theft
That's the point.
than he's in selling your
that's exactly
television.
the point. I think it was oversold, this idea of writing it down being dangerous, because there's a complete mismatch between the kind of person who will get your password by using technology and the sort of person who breaks into your house to get your TV or whatever.
You've really got to watch them smackhead geeks. They're the ones. They're the real ones. They're like that with glasses on.
It's a small cadre of the population.
Have you noticed, have you ever tried to wire up a Wi-Fi router?
Oh, many times.
When you're on the phone to a man in India and he says, go and read the numbers off the back of the Wi-Fi
Mac
router.
numbers.
Why does it have a password on the back of the router?
There's a default password that the routers have that you can change by going in using your web browser. You can access your...
Are you a help desk of some description?
I am a bloody hell. There's all my friends call me up with it. Just because I'm a boring nerd, but as it happens. But what you're saying is
have
correct.
you tried turning it off?
Or the one that said, take the card out and hit it with your teeth. Have you had that one?
Hit it with your teeth?
Yeah, that.
What?
Yeah. And I just...
Oh, my God.
He went spotted you.
I've got Jeremy Clarkson on. Take it, shove it up your arse. Go on.
You know that petrol you love so much? Pour it on your head. Now, have a cigarette. Go on.
The greatest danger when setting a password is thinking of a word that sounds cool at the time. Because you go, ooh, super spy. That'll be a good one. And suddenly you're in the mood where you go, oh, I have a whole other identity. That'll be amazing. I'll be the Raven. Or the Raven will be a good thing to check. And you'll forget your spy name the next time you go to check your Hotmail account. Go, was it the Hawk? No. Was it the Eagle? No. Quick.
I've never been able to read these incomprehensible bits of scribbly writing that you're supposed to reproduce to show that you are not
Catchkas.
a bot. You know,
Catchkas, they're called.
Yes, that's right.
Catchkas are called. The favorite is the ones because apparently computers can't scan in and recognise a wavy 3 or can't tell a kitten from a rabbit, which is the weird thing because humans can naturally go, it shows which of these are kittens, and you click, 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 and then the rabbit. But the robots have yet to work this out.
It's a web change.
This is how we will win the war. Which of these cute animals do you like?
I think you've got a problem if it says come up with a password and you're just holding up kittens. The computer's probably confused.
I'd rub them off the screen. Is that not what you're supposed to do? Find as many kittens as the computer asks for. Present them as an offering.
Lots of static electricity. Just leave them there. Put them up there.
Do you know what? Static is only so strong. Over time, they will slowly begin to slide down.
You know what? That's exactly why I do it. I have a kitten and a puppy, and then I sit there and I bet on which one's going to get. That's why I don't have a computer.
But it's strange how the biometric systems that have been in movies for at least 30 years, you know, retinal scans, thumbprints and so on, aren't really used. I mean, there are a lot of laptops that do ask for a thumb, but they haven't really taken off, have they?
Oh, I love the eye thing at airports.
Do you use this? Yeah.
Yes, and it's really good. Get very, very drunk on the plane, so your eyes are completely bloodshot. I'll never do it this time. I'm going to be locked in this box forever. And you know, it always knows it's me.
But my favourite, the best one to do in an airport, and it helps if you've got hair like mine, is you know that when you go through the first security bit and they take your photograph, what I do is I do a different hairstyle. And then change it for the next time. And then
whom do you think that's inconveniencing more? The security person or you? Who's the one who's having things looked up their bottom
I'll tell you
and
what.
missing their flight?
Well, you know, there's only so much
Whatever
time
you
you can
can-
kill in duty free. Why not shove something unusual up there? You know. Go on, guess what that is? Guess what it is?
I
Say what you see.
went to Gatwick. Went to Gatwick to go on a flight to Spain, and you know the way somebody behind you gets stopped and they go, "You've got fluids or whatever," or they go, "You can't do this," like whatever. And they said, and they all started laughing. And they said, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't bring this through, right?" And they took it, and it was like one of those 2-litre bottles of soft drink filled with water and a fish floating around.
They wanted to take their fish
They wanted
on
to
holiday.
they brought their fish with them wherever they were going, right? And then you can see a man kind of going, "The fish is grand. The fish is not the problem." Right? But the fluid, I'm afraid you can't bring the fluid.
Are you sure it wasn't just a Japanese couple and that was their packed lunch?
You just have to drink a bit of the water.
To prove that this is...
Prove it's not a...
Presumably
Well,
the
drink it
fish is
until it's
already
a bomb.
proving that it's not bomb.
Well, you did it. Good thing. But evidently, you know what?
Fish don't swim in nitroglycerine.
They're cutting out pain. Been trained to swim in explosive fluid.
That is exactly how I found out that I really like baby food.
Yeah, that's what they make you eat
They say,
it.
"Can you eat a bit of the baby food?" And I went, "Yeah, all right." And I said, "Yeah. Oh, that's good, that." We'll get some more for the child. We'll give her peanuts.
Delicious stewed apple.
Oh, yes.
Very
Lovely.
fine. Anyway, yes, the point is, there's more chance of someone tracking your computer than breaking into your house, and the latest thinking is that you might be better off really choosing a complicated password and writing it down. What's the best way to ensure that you get the best person for any job within a hierarchy? Or indeed, if you like, the least bad person? I'm talking about a principle in the promotion of people within office hierarchies.
Everyone gets promoted to one level above their degree of competence.
Yes, that is
So you
exactly right. Do you know what that's
demote
called?
someone.
Do you know what that's called? There's a name for that.
The Peter principle?
It's the Peter principle.
Yes.
The idea is, if, say, you start in an office and you're very good at filing or whatever, they say, "Hey, we'll move him up to this or her up to this." They go up to that. She's trying to go to that. Move her up. Move her up. As you're good at things, you will get promoted until you get to the thing you're not good at. And that's the sort of inherent flaw with a hierarchical system. So what would be the best way of electing MPs? Obviously, people have fiddled around with types of, whether there's first past the post or AV or PR or single transferable vote. But there is a system which guarantees a certain number of things. It guarantees, for example, that powerful interest groups can have no influence whatsoever on the outcome.
That's good.
Unlike the current system, where elections are won by people who are good at winning elections, it does not favour the charismatic, the rich, the well-educated or the well-connected. Votes cannot be bought. It's impossible in this system to be corrupt. It's called sortition. It's what the Greeks used. And it is, quite simply, lottery. It is the same way we choose a jury. You are told it is your duty for a certain number of years to be a politician. And you're paid for it. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it is a brilliant idea, except for the fact that if it's a lottery, do you really want to find out who the MPs are going to be by Dale Winton pressing a button? That's really the best.
Obviously,
Could be you.
Look, everybody!
Obviously, maybe I shouldn't have used the word lottery, but by a random selection of a citizen, essentially, that it becomes part of a citizen's duty for some part in their life to be involved in the process of government.
How many times could you put it off before they made you do it? Like
Well, that's an
jury
interesting
service?
point, isn't it? I mean, in Australia, they make you vote, don't they?
Yes.
And jury service, I'm not sure I've been let off jury service, as perhaps you would be, if you are a known face.
Sadly, it doesn't wash anymore.
Doesn't it?
No.
Oh, I wrote a letter and
I
said,
love
look,
the- I
I'm
love
very
the-
sorry, but I don't want to have some blood-dripped murderer staring at me saying, I know
I
you.
love that. The defendant comes out and sits down. Oh, shit, it's Clarkson. Oh, God, no.
And then sinks into his sombrero going, I shall not get justice here. You don't have to believe that I committed the crime.
What are the chances of an Italian and a German and a Mexican? Oh,
You're clearly guilty because you drive a Prius. The system they should have is they should just open the doors of Parliament and everyone just like piles in, and anyone who gets a seat, you're allowed to stay, everyone else out.
when the music stops,
Exactly.
you sit down. Yeah.
Speaker of the House with a mouth organ.
But sortition is a genuine system that was genuinely used by the world's first really great democracy, Greece, and it seemed to work very well. They believed that the idea of a professional politician with vested interests was inimical to the idea of democracy, rule of people, ordinary people, and that.
But it was open to everybody, was it? Because there are quite a few people I've just thought of I don't want doing it.
Well, mostly the ones who want to do it, which are the ones we have.
I'm just more intrigued by the fact of it being random punters, but it being done like that Noel's house party thing, where the television shows you. You know, when they flash on, there'll be somebody sitting on a couch. If they then go, and the Minister for Education is John Smith in Cornwall, and they go, oh, shite. No.
But anyway, it's worth thinking about, isn't it? It is a fascinating idea that we would have a duty to be politicians. It would stop us moaning quite so much. Why might it be a good idea to use your leisure time smoking 30 cigarettes a day, drinking explosives and eating dried blood?
Why would it be?
Yes. How might that help one? And indeed, in a strange way, possibly even lengthen one's life. We're in the war here, and there were black ops on both sides. And while we were in Italy, the Italians, who weren't as witless as perhaps we like to think of them as being as an enemy, they sent books of matches as gifts that would drop down on the Allied troops, and inside were little folded bits of paper. And the folded bits of paper said, look, there they were, look, this is how to pretend to be ill, very convincingly. You're going to lose the war. You're having a miserable time fighting us. It's ghastly. You're probably going to be killed. You've got a family back home. You've done your bit. Just pretend to be ill, and you'll get sent home. It's rather clever. And it gives advice for psychological things as well. It says, act as if you hate to be ill. It's quite good psychology. Stick to one set of symptoms, and don't tell the doctor too much. Basically, smoke as much as you can, 20 to 30 cigarettes a day. If you normally smoke as much, double it. And otherwise, there are various other little tricks you can use.
Why smoke? I mean, this is before people were going about lung cancer.
I know people did smoke a lot. It wasn't about lung cancer. It was about the fact that it made people breathless, and it could bring on conditions similar to cardiac arrhythmia and so on.
Okay.
Isn't it easier to just shoot yourself in the foot?
Well, the trouble is that was such a known thing, a blighty one, it was called. I mean, anybody who was shot in the foot in the war, people went, I don't think so.
Ear.
Yeah, that's it.
Shoot yourself in the ear.
It's a whole
That's a
thing.
difficult one to get exactly right.
Well,
The worst is you're gonna like end with a bullet in the ground. But
I think I could blow my own ear off.
They're telling you how to paralyse your arm by bandaging a pebble on your funny bone. And then there's a needless drawing of a bottom, figure 1.
There's no such thing as a needless drawing of a bottom. That's all I can say.
I don't know this is
It doesn't feature in any of the instructions. Why is there a bottom? Not mentioned.
No.
Just there to catch your eye. Advertisers do these days.
Meaningless movement.
But the British, of course, replied in kind, and
Yeah.
what we tended to do was flood them with books that looked like real German manuals, sporting books, all kinds of things, a Catholic prayer book, and sort of halfway through, suddenly, there would be this list of ways of how to pretend to be ill. And we really did use an enormous number of them. There's a man called Delmer who was in charge of it, Dennis Sefton Delmer, and he hoped to appeal to the sort of Germans' inner Schweinhund, as he called it. And there were manual, step-by-step instructions as to how to fake a wide range of diseases. And they sort of had a double effect. Once, because the Germans knew that they were there, obviously, and that meant they doubted a lot of people who were genuinely ill and sent real ill people back to the front, where they could be, A, demoralised, and B, spread infection. And generally, it's just all part of the strange little things people do. But they also gave a good way to fake tuberculosis, and this is really fascinating. How would you fake tuberculosis? This was a time, of course, well, sadly, we're in a time again when tuberculosis is quite a big threat to the world population.
Pretend to be a badger.
Well, there is the issue
Well, they all
of
got them.
whether or not badgers do or don't. Yes, I know. I can tell which side you're on in the great badger debate. But aside from that, tuberculosis...
Glass, the powdered glass.
Well, certainly you have to cough blood is important.
Yeah.
But the mucus you bring up is going to be analysed by a doctor. This only applies to men, and I think you'll see why in a little while. So get yourself a nice genuine cough by doing a lot of smoking. Tell the doctor you had flu some time ago, but the cough just hasn't gone away, and that there's blood in your mucus. You can add the blood to your mucus, obviously, just cut a finger and just add it to your mucus. You know, that's easy, because he'll want to analyse it. But what do you add to the mucus that would allow him to believe that you might have a tuberculosis bacterium inside? Well,
Sperm.
you're very close, horribly close. I'm afraid it's a little worse, in fact. What the gentleman must do is not wash downstairs for a while until cheese develops under the foreskin. And they take a little bit of this cheesy substance and add it to the mucus and the blood. And so when the doctor asks for the sputum, you give them that. And a lazy doctor and a pretty averagely competent doctor would be fooled by the similarity of whatever it is in smegma.
Just would rather not do the analysis.
Yeah. He wouldn't know that it was
Is he
smegma.
not just going to send you to a psychiatric ward going, you're eating knob cheese?
No, the point is he doesn't know it. You're using your knob cheese because it looks like TB bacillus.
You don't... Yeah,
That's the point.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's going to know, he's going to see the crackers falling out your pocket.
The what?
Jacob's crackers. You can't just eat it straight away. You can't.
Other crackers are available.
Get it.
The worst conversation I've ever been in, ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, this may be a television first, but I just want you to remember we are talking about a piece of history. We're talking about how people tried to malinger or pretend to be ill. We're talking
Personal
about
hygiene is
we're
very
talking about personal
important.
hygiene. We're talking about a fact. Some people may giggle when the word smegma or cock cheese is used on something. I think that's their problem, not ours. So, since we've got nothing better to do, what about a board game? Why was Alfred's game so much more successful than Alfred's other game? And that is Alfred, who is quite well... Yes, Scrabble is the answer. Alfred Butts is
And he sold out for bugger all.
Well, it was an interesting story. He had the idea of the board and the 15 by 15 squares and the triple letter and double word and so on. And he made them himself. And in the early 50s, it was around in the shops of New York and it was a great success. It just so happened the chap who ran Macy's, the famous department store, he played it one Christmas and he went nuts for it. Absolute nuts for it. And the following year, it sold 4 million. It was the fastest and biggest growing game in the history of that genre of games. It just completely went wild. And all he got, I say all, was about $1,600,000, Butts, the inventor. But he never complained about it. He said it's perfectly fine. It allowed me to have a wonderful life, and he was proud of it. But he then produced another game, which he called Alfred's Other Game. And that, unfortunately, wasn't a hit, despite the lady in the black busty dress. The principle of the scoring is pretty obvious. You use the frequency of letters in English. The highest possible score you could have from one word has been worked out. I wonder if you know what that word might be. It seems unlikely.
Well, it depends if you're Edinburgh. The highest I ever got was underpass on 2 triple word scores.
That's very good. I did Bezique once and got sort of 200.
Yes, you
200.
would do.
No, that was very lucky.
Well, you would do underpass,
well, I
though,
thought
wouldn't
was-
you?
Underpass was good.
All 2 words.
Well, you've got to use all 7 because you get the plus 50.
Yes, you've got to get the 50.
There
But
are
the
many.
most irritating thing about playing Scrabble with people is when they use words that aren't in common usage, that are in... They just, back in the early of this year, they announced that GRRL is now a word, but it isn't.
No, it isn't. And I basically have my house rule, which is you can't use a word you don't know the meaning of. I just don't think it's fair.
No, I go even
There's
further.
some people just learn lists of words.
Okay.
Well, why do it? Why put in a word that you
Do
just...
you let people have the list of 2-letter words on the show?
No. Joe is a classic case in point. I know it
playing
means
with you.
love, but I never use the word Joe
No.
in conversation, therefore you can't have it. Or people who spell axe in the American way.
Without the E.
It's just no.
Do you know the most commonly played word in Scrabble?
Penis.
No.
It is in my house.
It's rather thrilling.
Gay.
No, not gay. It's a good word. It's a fine word.
That's 7.
Even more
7 points.
QI, thank you very much. Key is the most commonly played
Really?
word in Scrabble. Because it's a Q that doesn't need a U, and you can just put it next to an I, and if it's on a triple letter, you're immediately scoring
Yes, but
well.
it's not.
It's the Chinese for the life force, as you know. Well, if you could possibly play the word, and obviously it would involve intersecting with many other words, because it's longer than 7 letters, if you could get oxyphenylbutazone, there is a technical potential score of 1,178. just for playing that.
And I bet you
As
have.
far-
I bet you've done it.
I've never played. No.
Is this called my bluff? Or
No.
Can I just point out, right?
The highest-
I'm dyslexic. I've never played Scrabble. To me, playing Scrabble is essentially like decorating a bathroom.
Oh, that is
Finished.
There are games of Scrabble that involve words like bezique, and there are games of Scrabble that involve words like tits.
No, I do both.
And these shattering stuff as you look back at a Scrabble board and go, God, we really aren't the sophisticated people we thought we were.
The highest recorded single word is 392 for Kaziks, played by Dr.
Quizzically
Carl.
would get you 400, I reckon.
That's obviously counting only one of the Zs.
Well, obviously, yes.
So that's pretty good.
But if you got it on two treble
Yes,
words...
that would be the key, isn't it? It'd be fantastic. All right, well, we're going to move on to something where spelling isn't quite so
Is it
important.
Boggle next? I like that too.
No, this is Monopoly. Strategically speaking, which are the properties that are best to buy straight away, if you can?
Are they the ones that if somebody's in jail, people constantly end up starting
That's the
again
point.
from
If
there?
you get a
yeah.
6 or an 8, which are the most likely throws you'll get from a double dice game, you're going to land on one of those as you move out of jail, which is rather appropriate because Vine Street, Marlborough Street and Bow Street are all streets which have in common...
Courts.
They used to have, yes, magistrates' courts in them. I think they're all actually now in disuse, but...
And why is there a dog?
Well, that's, or
And a hat.
Which one would you choose? You'd choose the car, I suppose.
Well, it's just a car or the ship. Why would you... Who said I...
a dog. You take a dog for a walk round
Yeah,
London.
but hang on a second. You'd go for the dog over the iron. I mean, let's be fair. Given a choice, you go, right, dog or the iron. In most scenarios, dog is a better option.
True.
Greyhound racing.
Yes.
Poof, they're off. Oh, the iron's lost again.
Yeah.
Quick, the criminal's getting away. Release the iron.
Johnny, I've got to get to that formal occasion in the next while. What am I going to do?
Do we know how they arrived at the idea of an eye and a dog ship?
Apparently, one of the theories is that these were all things that were on his wife's charm bracelet. His wife had a charm bracelet, the inventor of the game.
She had a ship on her charm.
Happy Christmas, darling. Here's an iron.
She might have...
To
I
remind
don't
you of
believe
the indentured
Yeah,
servitude of our married life. Here's an iron. Now go walk the dog, my top hat.
My next question on idleness is, what did the dormouse do on his gap year? There's a dormouse, aren't they charming?
Yeah, sweet.
I suppose this being QI, you know that probably the most obvious thing about a dormouse is...
They sleep in teapots.
Well, there is... According to Lewis Carroll, they sleep in
They're
teapots.
very
It's just-
quiet.
They're not mice.
Obviously,
And
yes.
they don't
That's
doors
what-
either.
So, nor are they doors. They're neither doors nor mice. It's possible that the dorm is the key. It's the dormancy of them.
Sleep.
In fact, they spend so much of their time asleep. They're the only animal that will hibernate for 18 months sometimes. No, look at him asleep there. Bless
He's
him.
dead.
Oh, shush!
He is being killed. That creature has been killed by those falling nuts next to him. He tried to fix it. Boom.
You got TB from a badger.
They live a surprisingly long life for small
Well, if
animals.
they sleep for 18 months...
What they do is they see how the harvest is going to be on the beech trees, like from very early in the season. If they think there are not going to be many nuts this year, they just go, well, I'll sleep till the next fruiting season and see if that's a better one. And they eat as much as they possibly can. They put on huge amounts of body fat, and they can sleep for that length of time. It's quite astonishing.
A strange animal thing I have, our house, you can see the river in the bottom of the garden, and we were showing this to some people who brought their kids for like a barbecue, and a squirrel came down off one of the trees and scampered out to the edge of the water. This is the Thames now. And then started swimming in the water towards the far shore. And you could see the ripper where he was going. The tail, when wet, thump, it disappeared. And we're all going, oh my God, this is fantastic. Look at the squirrel swim. And then all the parents go, Jesus, I hope he can swim all the way, because otherwise we're encouraging our children to look at a squirrel drown.
Someone go out. Get out there just in case he doesn't make it. Yes. I'll go. And then the squirrels think, Jesus, they're coming for me.
But tell me it did make it.
Disappeared from view, but then emerged at the point where the parents go, oh God, we have to explain death to these children from this thing. Emerges out of the water, shakes himself off, tail, thump, runs into the trees on the other side.
Very happy.
And raised 400 quid for sport relief. Very good.
You have to watch the last item on every local news coverage, because 2 minutes later he was on water skis.
Now, could you demonstrate the best way to sit the dolls you have been given, which you should find somewhere, in a chair? We're really after what's best for the back. So you've got a chair and you've got a bendy...
Some say that his politics are terrifying.
Please don't pull the string.
I'm afraid these are stigs that you can buy in shops.
And you pull the
Yep.
string and Clarkson speaks. I can't think of anything that would give nightmares to children more than... You're the best will in the world. You're not Woody from Toy Story. You know?
But what we're after is
Realise I
what
had
you
a
think,
chair.
what you seriously think is possibly the healthiest way to sit at a chair in an office.
Well, I can reveal this is how the Stig actually sits in
Is
a
it?
chair. Yeah.
So you've all gone for very unusual postures.
Yes, I
I
love
can't
those.
believe this.
I love those.
The head just came off mine and he revealed himself to be Action Man.
I knew it. Well, you're all doing very interesting shapes.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good for his back, is it? Constantly
Oddly enough, Clarkson wins on that.
Well, it's not difficult. They've all just
obviously,
got
yeah,
the
but no, you
meeting.
actually win because you're right, not just because you're least wrong. The idea was that sitting up straight was supposed to be good for your posture and good for your back. It's actually quite a steep backward, 130 odd degrees, is much better for you. They're the ways not to sit, that's the way to sit. It's a bit unfortunate you can often slip off your chair. It looks lazy, so bosses never like seeing people do it, but you can say it said on QI, so it must be true.
I'm gonna slap.
Or you can point to the research that has been done.
I don't know if this is possible. You know how if you use a chair, like a lion tamer uses a chair, would that repel a cat?
That's how you start, I guess. You
Yeah.
start with one of those
Just
on a
one of
cat,
them.
and then you build up
Yeah.
through the feline species.
Really? In working with the line, you start with a smaller chair? I would have
No, with a
worked
cat. You
I
start with a
presume
cat and a small chair.
I would suggest starting with a lion, but with a really huge chair.
No, you start with a small cat and a small
I
chair.
see what you're doing.
Use Stig to show me where the nasty man touched you, Alan.
Stephen.
No! Right, put them all away now, children. Thank you. Good
This must
God.
have been...
Yes, go on.
You know, I've got bloody Jim Henson next to me.
Yeah.
Oh, look, actually, look. What we can do is we can have our very own mock execution.
All we need now is a saw, and there you go.
Oh! Just because he revealed his identity in a book, you've got to fry him. It seems unfair. Moving on. If you can put away your toys now, please, because thank you. Let's have an ingenious interlude now. I want you all to make a homopolar motor. And you should have a bowl with these. This was first done in 1820 by one of the great scientists of the world. And it's actually rather amazing. You've got a wood screw, you've got a magnet, you've got a piece of wire, and you've got a battery, obvioly.
What was it, a
demonstration.
homophobic motor, did you say?
No, homopolar.
Homopolar.
Homopolar. It means you get rather depressed and you're gay. So no shushy nonsense. We'll show, I'm not sure
Sir,
how-
what do you have to do?
What's the tape behind?
Oh, the tape.
The tape behind. Oh, there's a man in
Take the screw in your
You touched.
right hand. With the what?
What's he doing
Magnet.
now? Is that just stuck to the... What's he done? Oh, I see that.
That's it.
Okay, hang on.
That's it.
Holy
Okay,
moly,
yeah,
if
that
this
is
works.
great.
And the extraordinary thing is how fast it goes round.
Jesus.
It spins round so
Oh
fast.
yeah!
It really
It's
does.
still going. It's still going. I'm not even connecting.
Why doesn't mine work?
How's that working?
Look at that.
And what happens if I was to use the power from the buzzer and just stick that...
It's still going without the wire being involved.
It's slowing down, isn't it?
It's what?
It's slowing down. You can't,
You don't need the wire.
It's still at some...
Your finger might be completing the circuit.
I've got sparks. I've got sparks.
Dropped it down there.
Oh dear. Perhaps you could be kind. Thank you. There you are. Michael Faraday demonstrated it all that time ago in 1820.
So strong.
And the ingenious thing about it is, as you see, that the speed at which it goes around, there's almost no friction. It goes around about 10,000 RPM. All right, now, Into the ice-cold shower of general ignorance we plunge ourselves. So put your fingers on your buzzers if you could, and if they're still working, Ross. We live in a spiral galaxy, don't we? Yes, thank you.
Fine.
We live in a spiral galaxy called the Milky Way. How many arms does that spiral have? Yes.
2.
No.
Nobody knows.
Yes, you're right, we don't know. Very good. And the reason we don't know is because we're inside it, and we could possibly know. Yeah, because we're right inside it. We can see distant galaxies and count their arms, but our own, when you're inside, you can't tell. So it's as simple as that. There you go. Now, can you be bothered to tell me what make and model of car this is? Yes?
Oh, it's a three-wheeler. What are they called? You drove one hilariously when the programme kept falling over around corners.
Sorry, is it a Robin Reliant?
No. A Robin Reliant?
It's a Robin.
That was really mean of me, because I knew someone was going to do that. Because everyone calls it a Robin Reliant.
It's not a Robin Reliant, or indeed a Reliant Robin. That is the Regal Supervan.
Yes.
The actual Robin was a different model, but for some reason that's the one that's stuck in everyone's head.
Right.
And there's the one that gets in the way of Mr. Bean in his Mini as well. People think that's a Robin Reliant, but in fact they are these Regal Supervans. I believe you have driven a Reliant Robin. Would you like to remind yourself of that experience?
Yes, this was setting off in it. Sheffield.
It was Sheffield, was
It
it?
was in Sheffield, and you get to the very first corner. That was a fast one, and then it rolled over again. And then it rolled over all day. Then it rolled over again, and then it rolled in the river.
No, apparently letters came to your office once saying that if Mr. so-called Jeremy Clarkson
On so-called gear,
knew how to drive the Robin, he would know that you cannot drive it at speed. Yes, as if you were all incredibly disappointed by that.
Yes. Oh, no, it's rolled over again. I must remember to drive more carefully. It's a completely boring road test.
So I believe you then challenged the Stig to drive it on the track.
He rolled it over.
On the first corner.
It's unbelievably comfortable to roll over it. You'd be very surprised as it flops over. I don't know why, it's the shape of the front wings, and it's just, that's nice. Because, it's quite annoying to be sitting bolt upright, and everybody looks a bit idiotic when they drive. Everybody does. You actually look at people in a car. And so to just think, I'm a bit weary, and then just go, yes. And have a lie down.
I once flipped a Land Rover. I had a Land Rover. So the thing went over, and bang, like, went onto its roof, onto its side. I was my wife's lip gloss hit me in the face. And then the sat-nav that was on the dashboard just came crashing down, and I was lying there, and the dust was all over the place like that, and the sat-nav went, off route, recalculate.
It's possible to do a U-turn.
It was a marvellous... I've just remembered when we did the rolling the Reliant Robin over, needless to say, health and safety got involved. And they made us take every single thing out of the car, including my cigarettes and cigarette lighter, lest these catapult themselves around and smack me in the eye. So every single thing had to be taken out. And then they put in this sort of, those window-breaking hammers with a very sharp point, very, very substantial piece of steel, a window punch. And they put that in the centre console. And the abiding memory I had as the thing was this spike. The safety equipment bloody nearly took my head off.
Well, that's unhealth and lack of safety gone mad. I'm thinking of training as either a doctor or a vet, obviously. I want the... oh, good God. I want the shortest possible course. Which should I choose? Which is the quickest one to become?
I'll do it. OK, ready?
Yeah.
Doctors. There you go.
Yes, people have it in their heads that for some reason it takes longer to qualify as a vet than as a doctor. In fact, it doesn't. By about 2 years, it doesn't. A veterinary degree takes 5 or 6 years, depending on the course. But to become British GP, you must train for a minimum of 9 years. There's 5 years you may get the word doctor, but at least... and then 12 years if you're going to be a hospital consultant. So.
How long was it for vets?
Vets was, well, depends on the course, but 5 or 6 years.
OK.
Yeah.
And then they have the highest suicide rate, do they not, of any job? Because the only people who want to be vets are people who love animals.
Yes.
And most of the time you're...
They just, what you do is I love animals. I so want to be a vet when I grow up. And you study for 6 years, and then all you do is drive around the countryside killing animals. My dog's not well.
Sleep.
My horse! Once it's been in the family, you can... Eventually, it's going to get to you. Eventually, you're just going to get fed up with...
If you're doing them 3 at a time, it's surely already. And also, you're not quite as emotionally attached as you previously were. You're popping them gang-styly, you're doing it on the back, you're lining them up 3 in a row to see how many you can do with them.
I mean, I'm sometimes terrified when Albert comes to shoot the donkeys or the horses.
Donkeys or a horse. Donkey or horse, you decide. When you did that sound effect there, that's the end of EastEnders. You said it. So now, in my head, every time I watch EastEnders, and they just go...
Horses are dying.
It should have been leave you now, and you just hear... Doo, doo. I'm just going to imagine bleeding donkeys falling.
It should have been the music for James Harriet. That's what it should have been. And now, all creatures great and small.
That's how it starts.
Well, the fact is, it will take you at least 9 years to train as a GP, whereas vets can do it in 5. Now, which gets more from charity in the UK? Animals or humans?
Oh, it's donkey sanctuaries, like it's animals.
No, we like to think of ourselves as an animal-loving thing, and we like to tell stories of how mad people have given huge sums to donkey sanctuaries or whatever, but in fact it always has been the case that far and away the most money we give is to human charities, and in particular one kind, if you can...
Well, actually, children's charity.
No, not children's charity. That isn't the
Is it
cancer.
Obviously, some children riding on the backs of sick donkeys.
Yeah.
You give a lot more to animals than you do to the old.
That may be true.
Yes.
They've just amalgamated the two major old people's charities, haven't they, at the time, and I don't have those figures.
I thought they'd amalgamated animals and old people. Which would be... what you've created there is a sort of... What you've done... What you've done...
They've got it with venison, and they're called old deers.
Yeah.
Basically, yes, cancer research gets the most by massively in front. Children's charities do well, and obviously some of those are also cancer-related, but not as well as the National Trust. The National Trust gets more money than children's charities do. The RSPCA is Britain's favourite animal charity, but even that has never been in the top 10 of British giving. Which brings us ambling idly towards the scores and what reading they make. In last place, with an impressive -15, Dara Briain. And lounging lazily behind him on +1, Jeremy Clarkson. Just a little bit ahead there, though, on +4, it's Ross Noble. And in an episode which is all about indolence, who would ever have thought that the day would come when I'd say that our runaway winner with +12 is Alan Davis? Well, that's all from this indolent edition of QI, so it's good night from Dara, Jeremy, Ross, Alan and me. And if it's any consolation to our losers, I'll leave them with these wise words from James Thurber. It's better to have loafed and lost than never to have loafed at all. Good night.